After thinking for a few moments, Slissa replied, "Yeah, maybe it will lead us, Yak. But if we go to the Spectre not knowing how to fight it, it'll be worse. Help me push, come on." "Fine. Hope I'm wrong." "Well," said Rayak, grunting from the effort of pushing the boulder, "wouldn't be the first time." Instead of bursting with rage, Yak just let out a wholesome smile as he helped move the enormous rock out of the way. His face somehow looked younger, less scrunched than before, but mainly happier. "Here comes the moment of truth, boys," announced Slissa as the boulder reached a tipping point. With one final effort, the entrance to the cave was revealed as the light of Ryuk's flame began to creep into it. The large rock fell, and part of it shattered as it hit the floor, making a tremendous amount of noise. The loud crack was followed by a few seconds of ominous silence, during which the orcs could only look at each other with fear and expectation. "Hayar!" A pulsating war cry shattered the peace as a figure emerged from the cavernous entrance. A heavily wounded orc flailing a crude battle axe through the air as he ran towards the party, bursting out of the gap. They barely managed to dodge his frenzied attack, Ryuk even falling to the ground after the orc's huge muscular body partially crashed into him. Their assailant has a large open wound in his lower waist. The fact that he was even standing up was proof of his immense determination. Despite all his strength, he seemed confused and erratic. Are you my ancestors? Am I dead?" After blurting out those words, the mysterious wounded orc shook his head, as if he was clearing his head of disconcerting thoughts. He decisively charged towards Slissa, with enough force to split her in half with one clean axe swing. The daughter of the late Kurao Taikir wasn't yet ready to join her father and quickly moved out of the way, hitting her attacker's left leg with a dexterous kick on her way out. Destabilized, the orc tumbled to the ground and impacted against the cavern's wall. "Ah! You won't get me today, ghost! I'm Tricolor of the Terok bloodline, and I will not be Before he could finish his sentence, Tricolor Terok collapsed from his wounds and his exhaustion. Getting up and wiping the dust from his clothes, Ryuk approached the wounded orc. Slissa and Yak were both still in battle stance when the sorcerer walked right between them and began inspecting the unconscious body. "He must have been attacked by the Spectre. This looks like a vitality drain to me," he said, pointing at Tricolor's waist wound, which looked burnt and unnaturally dark. "It's incredible that he survived." Yak lowered his guard, seeing how the would-be attacker was not a threat anymore. "It's probably thanks to his markings. I've seen that type before," he said. "They're anti-magic birthmarks, a rare blessing from the ancestors." Slissa tilted her head thoughtfully. "I had seen markings before, strength, resilience, but none that could shield you from a damn spectre. Just his luck." While the Ark and Ryuk discussed magic and blessings, Slissa treated Tricolor's wounds with some crude bandages. After a few minutes of discussion, rest, and speculation over what the spectre could be, the party decided to try and wake up Tricolor before going further down the cave system. "Here, let me," said Ryuk, as he radiated healing magic from his hands and touched the wounded orc's chest. His many injuries quickly healed, as if an entire week had gone by. The effects were substantial on Tricolor's lesser wounds, but his waist puncture only slightly improved. A magic wound is always more difficult to heal, for it tears both flesh and spirit, but he will be all right. "Oh," Tricolor grunted slightly as he opened his eyes, before letting out a valorous chuckle as he laid eyes on his saviors. "Ha! So I'm not dead. The ancestors must really love me, don't you think?" "Honestly, kid, I think you were just lucky we stumbled upon you," replied Yak. "Don't call me kid," answered Tricolor, still groaning a bit between his words. "I'm goddamn 40 already." Slissa quickly moved the Ark out of the way and bombarded Tricolor with a quiz about the Spectre, how to fight it, its strengths, weaknesses. After a flurry of about 15 questions, Tricolor simply laughed and looked her in the eye with a nostalgic expression. You're Corral's daughter, aren't you? Frozen and stone-faced, Slissa replied with a simple yes. He was my friend. I would recognize that inquisitive mind anywhere. Not expecting an answer, Tricolor continued. I'll tell you everything I know about that damn ghost. It's only vulnerable when it attacks, and completely bloody untouchable the rest of the time. If you want to hurt it, you have to goad it in, and destroy it while it tries to hurt you. Now, don't think that shit's easy. It ain't. Ryuk interrupted Tricolor to ask what the thing wanted, what it was doing. The answer was simple. It was draining everything, growing bigger. The Orcs looked at each other with a mix of fear and indecisiveness. Yark suggested that they should gather reinforcements back at the camp and ambush the Spectre. But Tricolor reminded him that the land would be drained and the aberration gone by then. Besides, if faced with an unbeatable foe, the Spectre would probably refrain from attacking and just leave, taking advantage of its physical invulnerability. Swallowing their fear and replacing it with the orcish confidence and prayers to the ancestors, the Resilience Party continued their way down the caves. They knew what they were facing, but that didn't make the quest any easier or less unnerving. The tunnels quivered from time to time, threatening the Orcs with collapse and certain death. But all they could do was go further down into the spider's den. Once the descent was over, they walked into a large, cavernous room illuminated by a bright beam at its center, weapons drawn. It seemed to be pooling energy from above, channeling it down and feeding it right into the Spectre's mouth. As the monstrosity absorbed the vital force of the land, the Orcs looked at each other in slight disbelief, equally horrified and intrigued by the grim process. The Orcs shouted at the creature, "The Orcs are here, you dusty fart! We'll fucking murder you!" The Spectre continued its absorption process for a few seconds before turning around and etching a spine-chilling, ghastly grin, as if it was amused by Yark's insult. Its corporeality seemed to dissipate as it let out a horrifying laugh. Legs slightly shaking, Ryuk blurted out a question. "Where is it?" The Orcs invaded the room slowly, nervously inspecting their surroundings for clues of where their assailant could have gone. His dagger and short sword at the ready, Yark ventured farther than his comrades, setting himself up for an ambush. As he observed the gigantic draining ray up close, almost hypnotized by its vibrant colors, another burst of laughter erupted as the Spectre materialized behind the old man. The scream of pain was so profound and heart-wrenching that it was impossible to ignore. Yark's back received a cut so deep that it was a miracle his body was still holding together, instead of falling apart into slices of muscle and blood. Slissa was the only one fast enough to react, throwing a small knife in the direction of the Spectre before it could vanish again. Upon impact, the hit sounded like the echo of shattering glass. The Spectre moaned in pain, with a hateful expression on its face, hatred directed fully towards Slissa. She froze in terror for a moment under the gaze of the monster facing her, before quickly snapping out of her fear and shouting an order to her comrade. "Remember Tricolor's words, Ryuk! Attack when it happens! Block when it attacks!" "For the ancestors!" replied Ryuk. Bleeding out on the ground, Yark painstakingly tried to drag himself towards the drain ray in the middle of the room. A force of will not often seen in people his age powered his muscles, which pushed forward despite being deeply lacerated. A spark of brilliance ignited in Ryuk's head. He quickly approached his wounded comrade and feigned helping him. Kneeling at his side, he said, "I'm sorry about this. I don't have any more vitalization power in me. Just hold on and you'll make it." As he uttered those words, he prepared a fire spell in his hand, covering his trickery by hunching his body. A few seconds passed without any action. "Ryuk, what the hell are you doing?" shouted Slissa. Just when she finished her question, the crackling, ethereal sound of the specter's materialization flooded the room. Upon hearing the dreary noise, Ryuk immediately turned around and fired a blast of scorching magic, not even taking a second to aim his power. The blast went right through the specter's chest, who had materialized beyond Ryuk to take advantage of his distraction, helping Yak. Its very essence seemed to melt as the sorcerer maintained the spell's strength for as long as he possibly could. After a few seconds of powerful energy, though, Ryuk's magic was completely drained and the column of fire dissipated. With a hole in its chest and its essence barely holding on, the specter let out a broken laugh, as if getting just one more victim was worth a lethal injury. It raised its spectral arm high and manifested its dark claws, trembling from the sweltering damage, but still ready to take out the young orc. Ryuk closed his eyes, knowing he had done his part in the fight. "Piss off, ghost!" As if the ancestors themselves had appeared to save the party, Tricolor emerged behind the specter and lowered his great axe in one swift, brutal motion. Cut in half, what remained of the specter after Ryuk's spell disintegrated and collapsed into small crystalline shards of darkness. "Seems like your health spells work wonders, sorcerer. Didn't catch your name." Opening only one eye, his teeth still grinding from the expectation of the specter's attack, Ryuk slowly came back into himself. Ryuk, pleasure." While the others finished off the specter, Yak pulled himself to the next vitality drain ray and, in a last effort for survival, tried to imitate the specter and absorb some of its energy before it disappeared, following the steps of the specter that commanded it. As the others turned their faces to look, they were too shell-shocked to do or say anything to him. To the surprise of everyone, the ray healed Yak deeply, although not completely, before dissipating into nothingness. Revitalized, the old man didn't look so old anymore. It was uncanny, to say the least. "Well, kids, I think we have some things to report to the Queen, don't we?" Slissa, still somewhat stunned, clumsily replied. Yeah, sure. Let's start heading back. We've got a long way up."